in this current market, I would love to switch gears to talk a little bit about copper. Now, if we want to hop straight into the chart here, you'll see that the chart that I'm looking at is just the futures chart. But if you look at it on Pepperstone or wherever, you'll be able to see a lot of the same data. The data just says we up big. Copper has been performing incredibly well. We did see some lows somewhere around here in April, towards late April, again in October of this past year. But ever since January, this thing has absolutely skyrocketed. We've seen a 47.20% return in just 60 days of trade. I'm sorry, not 60 days of trade, in 60 weeks of trade. Absolutely insane amount of growth that we're starting to see in this kind of commodity. So the question is, are we buying it? Here's the long and short of it. The long and short of it is, I believe copper is a real opportunity for the future. There are a variety of reasons why we want to be involved in it, but maybe not involved directly. That's a little bit of a preview. Let me show you what I mean. Obviously, copper's looking really good on the chart. This is the weekly. When you look at the daily, it still looks incredibly convincing. Waiting for a pullback is a good move. We've seen a little bit of a pullback here. Will we see a continuation around this area? I'll get into that a little bit later, but let's talk a little bit about some of these fundamentals. Copper, believe it or not, is seeing a crazy uptick primarily because of AI. What is copper used for? I worked in construction all my life. I still do work as a office manager for a construction company, but when I was in the field, I was using copper constantly. I was using copper wire. I was using copper pipes for plumbing. Copper is absolutely everywhere. You'll hear about people stealing catalytic converters because of the copper inside. It's all about what the commodity can do for the conducting of electricity and the safety of the metal itself. Well, one of the things I mentioned there was the wiring. Copper is used in a variety of different kinds of wiring and different kinds of hardware. One thing that really fascinated me was the fact that NVIDIA has a really intense connection to copper beyond just the wiring, because these semiconductor companies, companies like NVIDIA, companies like the Taiwan Semiconductor Company, Advanced Micro Devices, I've never called AMD that, but here we are. That's what it stands for, right? So, although we have mostly silicon that plays the biggest role inside of these chips, the GPUs, the CPUs, so on and so forth, the copper exists within these chips in order to help electricity conduct. Think about it like axons in our brain pushing electric signals from one side to the other. Copper helps that happen within GPUs, within CPUs. It's one of the reasons why it is so incredibly valuable. Last week, you saw me talk a little bit about the growing amount of data centers that are spreading across the United States. This isn't exclusive just to the US. We have multiple countries producing or trying to produce as many data centers as possible to support this new AI revolution. And it's causing demand on copper to go up considerably. McKinsey and Company, very, very large consulting firm, believe that the interest, the demand in copper is going to grow considerably, almost something to the effect of 20%, a little bit over 20% over the next few years. We're expected to reach 36.6 million metric tons in demand by 2031. That is considerably more than the 25 million metric tons that we are looking at demand right now on an annual basis. That is a really big move. Next piece of the puzzle that I think has played a much larger role in copper that we maybe don't think about all the time is EVs. Sometimes when we think about copper in cars, we only think about the catalytic converter example that I gave earlier, but copper is used so much more in EVs for obvious reasons. It's electric. If you look at this chart down here, you'll see how much, on average, copper content exists within each different kind of vehicle. Internal combustion engine, normal car, your Porsches, your Toyota Corollas, luxury or not, you're using 50 pounds. Hybrids kick this thing up to 90, and then full electric vehicles on average use 183 pounds of copper per vehicle. And obviously, as the demand for electric cars go up, we've seen Elon and Tesla do incredibly well. We've seen a variety of different heritage brands start producing nothing but electric cars. Look at the Mustang, look at the Corvette. These cars are becoming so much more commonplace that the demand for all the components within these batteries have become much more to die for. 183 versus 50, that's almost is almost a it's almost four times as much copper. It's just absolutely insane. There's so much that has attracted us to that space. It's playing an absolutely massive role. Now, getting down to it, copper is a commodity. Copper is not something that we will have forever. We do recycle everything to the best of our ability, but we are recycling at a pace that is slower than the pace that we are able to mine it. It is what it is. This is a breakdown of copper and understanding copper from Canada, because Canada is the fourth largest producer of copper in the world. They just have a lot of the space. In 2022 alone, they produced 510,000 tons of copper in concentrate, mostly coming from British Columbia. But these exports are a very, very big deal. As you guys can see, there are so many uses for copper already, but this was just looking at things in 2021. We were only starting to see the seedlings of AI start to pop up. We only start to see the beginnings of AI become a conversation in 2021. So as we see time pass, I imagine that equipment manufacturing is going to start pushing higher and higher and higher over time. When you look at the total amount of copper that's in the world right now, we only have something to the effect of 886 million tons of copper, most of which exist in Chile, the the Democratic Republic of Congo, Peru, so on and so forth. But this is a really, really big deal because, like I just said, demand has continually grown over the past few years. McKinsey expects it to grow to 36.6 million tons by 2031. So as each year goes past, if we don't find a strong, good way to make sure that we can considerably raise the amount of copper that we're recycling, we're going to be running out of more copper day by day, night by night. And that's going to put more pressure and demand on the space. Now, earlier when I talked about this product, when I talked about copper, I said that we should be involved, but maybe not involved directly. I'd love the copper chart. That doesn't necessarily mean that I want to buy the commodity. One thing that I am interested in buying, though, are copper producers, companies like Freeport McMoran. Now, this article talks a little bit about how there's been a 5-year decline in earnings and how that might be taking its toll on this particular company. Shareholders saw this stock fall 5%. This is a horrible title here. That's not exciting. We don't want to see this kind of thing. It's for equities that we're looking to invest in. But when you look at the performance of the equity, you realize, oh my gosh, we're down 5% today, but we're up 431% over the past 5 years. When we think about our connections to equities and our connections to different assets, sometimes we could be so short-minded and we can see these horrible titles and think, oh my gosh, why is this guy talking about buying something that's fallen 5%? Because the doggone thing is up, not double, not quadruple, but quintuple, not quintuple, whatever 8 times your total value is.
Octuple?
That's how much this thing is up right now. Octuple? I don't know. I don't have the words. We're up a lot. There's a lot of money that has been made in this particular equity. And when you think about things in terms of exposure to a particular asset, if you're buying copper, you have complete exposure to the copper market. And that could be great. You can maximize some profits there. But if you're able to get involved with an equity, a miner that produces copper, In other things, Freeport not only produces copper, they also produce a variety of other precious metals, palladium, for example, and so many more. This gives you an opportunity to get some of that upside on copper, collect a nice little dividend, nothing crazy. It's like a 1.2% dividend yield, but you can collect a nice little dividend. And as the price of copper goes up, it goes up so aggressively that Freeport's cost to produce the copper, to mine the copper, simply cannot keep up. So we're seeing a large disparity between the cost that it costs Freeport to actually mine the copper and then the profit potential that they have from copper's price continually going up. Their cost to do business more or less remains rather stable over several years. But when things push up 40% of the thing that you're selling, you're able to produce record profit, record profit, record profit. So when I talk about not buying copper, it's because I'm looking at these kinds of opportunities to go ahead and buy different miners, different unique opportunities. Now, I don't want to get too into the weeds there. So let's just hop into the chart. Copper itself, if you wanted to buy it, obviously, like I said before, we're at a great area for a nice little pullback here. But when you look at this pullback, it is such a tiny pullback. Now, how do you know that this thing isn't just going to fall through the floor as commodities often do? One thing I like a little bit more about a Freeman of FCX, we'll call it. I have such difficulty in calling this company. Is one thing that I really appreciate about this is also at highs, of course, but we have a lot of value that's been built up in this area here. So being able to buy within this area between the 47.36s and the 52s feels a lot better to me than just buying the highs at copper, because it's obvious that this market put a lot of work in to develop value here and then broke out significantly $3, so almost 10% to the upside. So buying something like this at levels here feels a lot more comfortable for me than buying copper almost at its all-time high. This is just something to consider, something to put on the back burner for you in your mind when you're thinking, I see this headline, I want to be a part of it. How do I appropriately manage risk? The core idea here is making sure we're getting exposure to all the hot stuff, but we're not getting as much exposure to the downside.